All right. So thank you so much for having me. It was a very interesting kind of path of me getting connected to conscious capitalism from quite an opposite part of the country. But in February of this year, I gave a talk at Phoenix Startup Week about entrepreneuring remotely and the three pillars of this process that I learned over 4.5 years prior of building my own, co-founding my own company, fashion tech company. And then, as you know, just very shortly after, we were all forced, willingly or unwillingly, to start entrepreneuring and working and leading and managing remotely. So it was very interesting timing, but I guess, the time has come. And since then, I thought a lot about that. A little bit about me. I currently work, I have a full-time job as a project manager of an online education platform developed in collaboration between Arizona State University and Starbucks, called Starbucks Global Academy. I also have my own consulting called Ask Edie. I focus on early stage consulting, kind of launch, brand strategy for, well, my personal passion is food brands, but I don't discriminate. And in the past, I was a copywriter. I ran product, kind of did a lot, and I picked up different processes. And right now, I work very extensively with teams all over the world. So I work with developers in Ukraine and India. I work with creative teams in Europe. So have quite a bit of experience of managing remote teams. And I tweaked with this particular conversation, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. The topic that I wanted us to talk about, and I encourage you to have an open conversation. You can send something to the chat, or raise a hand and kind of chime in. Don't be afraid to interrupt. So I want to focus on how to entrepreneur remotely, and specifically how to lead from a distance for impact, connection, and results. Why do I talk about this? Is because I really came to care about how we work and who we are when we work. And I think that goes well with the mission of conscious capitalism. So now, as of recently, we have 69 million people, or 42% of US labor force, that are now working remotely full time. And obviously, you probably have seen that in your businesses. There are lots of opportunities there, and also lots of challenges. And specifically, I wanted to talk about challenges for managers and opportunities for managers. So here, according to some of the surveys, here are the top concerns of managers of remote teams. The top three are reduced focus, reduced team cohesiveness, and reduced productivity. Of course, some employees report the opposite. They report that for the lack of distraction, they're able to focus better and be more productive. But obviously, it's always, there are always two sides of the coin. But what does a manager need to look like in this environment where we do have more distractions? Everyone's basically juggling all these different things at home. Many have kids, school-age kids at home. Many have limited space or might not have a home office. There are issues with, worrying about the business, about the health of the close ones, whatever it is. There's a lot of disruption, right? A lot of kind of anxiety, and we're all tired. We all want to do things. So what does a manager need to be to support employees who are, juggling all of that? I like to think of this as the anatomy of a new leader. And the four main components of that anatomy are trust, purpose, engagement, and whole self. So trust, right? The main assumption is that one way or the other, we have to learn to trust our employees to do the work. We might be able, obviously everyone has different management style, but some managers used to be more involved and more prone to maybe micromanaging or kind of like very regular check-ins with their employees. Some are more hands-off. So it's a different transition. For some, it will be harder. For some, it's more natural. But nonetheless, it's not respectful of your own time to keep micromanaging people who work for you. So how do you cultivate that trust? How can you really honestly say, okay, I trust everyone on my team to do the work? Well, the foundation of this is understanding that everyone you work with or who work for you have very clear sense of purpose, which means they know why they're doing the work they're doing. They know why they're working for this exact company. And there's a meaning, right? They have something to wake up to every morning, because all of us need this now more than ever. The reason to get up, to, get dressed, brush our teeth, and not just stay in bed all day. How to build this purpose, right? How to cultivate this purpose within the team, and in general, why in the world do people work? Well, from one end, we can think of it as, it's fickle times. We need to make money. We need to provide for the family. We're afraid to lose the job. So I'll keep showing up grudgingly and kind of do some sort of work. Well, of course, less than ideal scenario, obviously. But multiple research shows that indeed that is not the main reason. Of course, everyone needs to provide for their families or for themselves. But also there's a big need to be needed, to be proud at the end of the day, to feel like something was accomplished, to improve skills, to show off your skills, to feel your own self-confidence, self-efficacy, to be recognized, to connect, and so on. Thinking about a lot of research that talks about, the depression rates skyrocketing once people retire and don't have any of that. That is all very, very strong motivators. And especially now when we got, forcefully disconnected, how do we still keep that contact, keep that, conversation going and acknowledge each other? So here's some very basic tips, but I think that, you probably have heard them before, but my recommendation is just to really critically and openly and honestly analyze your management style, or, management style of people maybe that you're close with, people you mentor, people who mentor you. And it's one of the prerequisites in these times is to learn to share and to accept criticism and accept things more openly. So I just want to open this kind of true conversation. So the things that...
Just commenting back on what you said about trust, and I don't know if you're familiar with the McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y. Heard about that? So he basically said, if you believe your employees come to work, every day to goof off and do as little as possible, you're right. And if you believe that your employees come to work every day to do, to share everything that they can to help in every way possible, to be completely engaged, you're right.
You're also right. Right. Exactly.
Because essentially you make by your expectations, by your attitude to your employees, you turn them into, they become what you expect. So if you treat people with this, with that, if you show people that you don't trust them, then they don't trust you either. If you show people that
Absolutely.
You trust them, then they tend to respond back and trust you also and get more engaged and more excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Great call out. And speaking about, engagement, engagement is one of the main ways to empower the team. And I like to think of it as treating your team, your employees, your partners that you work with as your customers. So, in any industry, you would go pretty frequently, at least that's the best practice. If you don't do it, do it. You go to your customers pretty regularly, ideally, on at least monthly, if not weekly, if not daily basis, and ask them questions. Well, what if we assume that each of the people who do work with you, for you, are also customers? And the work that they do is the product. And so what feedback can they give on the work that they're doing? right? How can they leverage their skills, expertise, their context that is, unique to each individual, their insights? What answers do they have, or what suggestions, what their intuition is telling them? I'm a big proponent of including intuition and gut feelings into business planning. I think that data is great and important, but I think that data alone is nothing without the intuition of the business leader. So letting employees really shape what it is that they do and how they do it, and giving them solutions that will challenge them and also, empower them to see, okay, yeah, I had the skill, I didn't know how to implement it, but now I know that I can add it to this work process, and now there's something new that comes out of it. And through this ownership, through really letting go of the reins, but letting go of the reins in a supportive way, in the way that like hands them over. Not that you just kind of step away and then, anarchy and chaos ensue and, you guys are on your own, but in a way that, I trust you, I work with you because I value you, because I know that you have something that I can't bring to the table. You can bring that to the table. And do it, bring other things to the table that I haven't even considered. And then after they do that, it is very important to, it's very easy to kind of like move on to the next thing and, okay, next milestone, next, on and on and on. Obviously, there's a lot of wheels to keep in motion at the same time right now. So acknowledge that expertise, pause, thank them. And the framework in which this should happen, and this is something that is one of my main probably tips about effective remote entrepreneurship or leadership or just work, is to over communicate. So I had these situations with my previous partner where, Slack exchanges are great, but you need to validate the assumptions that you make. There are a lot of assumptions that are happening in those chat exchanges, in the email threads. And you probably need to talk to people on the phone or on Zoom face-to-face more often than you want. And then you think, just because there's no way of, in Slack, there's no way of looking them in the eyes. You don't read the body language. You just can be in your own thoughts. This message come, you projected whatever you had in your head at that time on that message. You made assumptions. So over communicate, talk and talk and talk, ask questions, confirm, repeat back to them what they said to you. This is one of the biggest challenges, I think, of effective remote collaboration and leadership.
One of my favorite authors lately, his name is David Sloan Wilson. And one of the things he talks about is that he says the smallest unit of human is not an individual person. The smallest unit of human is a group. Mm-hmm. So, and because that's how we're designed. We're not designed to be complete in and of ourselves, but we're designed to be complete when we're in a group, because everybody's got different perspectives, different pieces of the puzzle. And, when we have, he's an evolutionary biologist. So he's basically saying, when we evolved over the last 70,000 years, Marianna may have one set of skills, one way of looking at the world. I've got a different set of skills. Glenn's got another one. And when we come together and share those things, it's because we are all different that we can contribute to the rest of the group. If we were all the same, if we were all clones of each other, all had the same ideas and the same skills, we'd all make the same mistakes and not get anywhere. So, the reason why it works so well to get everybody involved is because we are really unique and really individual, people, but we're designed to be part of a group. And we really, really, really want to be part of that group. Like you were saying before, we want to make that contribution. We want to feel needed. We want to feel a part of something. Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari who was saying that humans kind of, won the evolutionary race, not because we were stronger or, tigers were stronger, there's plenty of predators and other competitors in that race who were much stronger or, had much better advanced certain skills, like survival skills, but we could get together and then discuss and work out a strategy. And that's what basically brought us to where we are today with our
medicine and all that stuff. So yeah, most definitely. And again, I think that it's easy to say, but really deeply understanding that, like, really making an effort to not take your team for granted, and assuming the best, right? I had this issue with, in some of my previous projects partners, where I had this underlying sensation that I wasn't trusted to really do my best work. And that hurts. God, does that hurt? Like, then you just don't want to do anything. So I think that assuming this competence, assuming best interest, assuming that the person is involved, like you said, if you tell a person they are incompetent, they will be incompetent. Very few people want to prove you wrong in that sense, especially your employees. It's more, in this case, positive reinforcement and seeing the best in people really works best than, the opposite.
There's one, I'll just throw out one other thing. There's she wrote a book on leadership, but she brings in the ideas from quantum physics. And what she says is that in quantum physics, particles and things don't actually exist. Mm-hmm. They come into being because of the relationships between other particles around them. So it's the relationships that cause the person to come in, to cause the particle to come into being. So in the same way, when you look at people, we actually, by being who we are, or by the situation that we enter, we become a different person, or we affect the people around us become different because of the relationships between us.
Right, exactly.
Margaret Wheatley.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, there you go. Right. Yep. And if you tell a person that, I know you can figure this out, I know you can come up with a superb solution, they're most likely to come up with that support solution. And even if they can't figure it out right away, to put in the effort to figure it out, because you elevated them rather than lower the bar to say that, or to imply that, you're just doing it for the money anyways.
Right.
So whole self. Wanted to talk about that, and this has been my tune since the very beginning of this, thinking about this topic. So the time has come to, put masks on, I guess, but also on many levels, masks are coming off. Because first of all, we're all in each other's homes all the time.
Yeah.
Through Zoom, we are all, kids come in. We don't always have that reset period where we, like, maybe in our car commuting or something, to kind of separate our work and life that much. Again, like, the levels of anxiety might be higher, whatever it is. Just the feeling of being, stuck in the same place, not being able to go see family, whatever it is. So we bring a whole lot more baggage, and that baggage shows much more. So it is very important, therefore, to take care of what is underneath that mask, the mask that you might have worn at work. It's very important to take care that you really are okay underneath. And as a manager, of course, now in the previous few slides, I just put in like this whole other load of stuff on your to-do list that you need to now think about, not just how to grow your business and how to keep it afloat where, things are tumbling, but how to also, do all that stuff for your team, which in the long run will help. And even in the short run, it will help, but it's still, emotional load, like mental load, it adds to that. So how do we take care of what's underneath? Well, I like to think of the whole concept of entrepreneuring remotely and leading remotely and working remotely, to me, is based on 3 pillars: motivation, management, and mindfulness. So the 2 outer pillars are motivation and management. And we talked about this. We definitely talked about motivation, and it fuses with management. We can talk about things like time management, right? And kind of prioritization of things. I think there's plenty of content on those topics. But why do we need this 3rd pillar of mindfulness? What is this happens if it doesn't exist? And Christina Malish, she's a professor, and she defined 6 conditions of burnout. And those conditions are workload, control, reward, community, fairness, and values. So workload means you just have too much on your plate. Pretty understandable. From the manager perspective, the ability to delegate and to trust, to trust delegation and to be able to distribute workload throughout your team, leverage maybe skills of someone who has, an additional skill set, but can take some load off of someone who has that core skill set that you need. And so, just thinking about that in that way. Control here is in the context of lack of control. When your priorities constantly change, when you get thrown into work that doesn't make sense to you, where, there's no rhyme or reason to what you're doing. Maybe you have to stay up late because your boss gave you a report to do at 5 p.m. or whatever it is. Reward is when you don't feel like you're rewarded appropriately. That has to do with money, but that also has to do with all that being seen and appreciated for what you do. And it's very important to not underestimate that. Money can be money, but if no one cares about what you do, you're never seen, you're never recognized, that does hurt, and it does contribute to the feeling of dissatisfaction. Community, again, obviously challenge now, but important to keep it going and to keep, to have some informal connects with your team or outside of your team throughout the day, to have some chats with your clients, to have this informal community feeling going on top of just discussing work things. Fairness, again, this has to do with not being recognized, not being appreciated. Maybe someone gets promoted because, something that you do, but now you're remote, so maybe you are not as seen and your contribution isn't noticed. And then values, this is broadly and probably, is familiar with all of us, to all of us, is just how does the business you're building, the company you work for, is it doing the right thing in your mind? Are its goals in line with what you aspire to? I think for a while it's possible to keep going with somewhere maybe who's just in a company that's focused entirely on growth and that's it, and just more and more money. But overall, long term, if your internal values are not in line with that traditional understanding, right, then it's puts pressure on psyche. Some of the tips that I find useful and that I have discussed with many people before that help is just allow yourself to be a little bit more authentic in interactions. Not try to always be right, be, more open about, maybe like, I need a little bit slower day. Maybe I'll move this meeting. And obviously it's not critical, but maybe, some meeting, maybe I can move it to tomorrow because today I really need a day to just focus and recharge, which I totally encounter. I'm on Zoom pretty much all the time. So those days when I don't have any Zoom calls, it's really okay. But I'm teaching myself to be also more open, saying that, okay, like this day is going to be a little slower and I need a little bit more internal focus, or maybe sometimes I'm not feeling as bubblicious and not ideate as quickly, and then it's also okay just to let yourself be more you. Mindfulness practices, again, there's a ton of information on that. So walks, sitting in silence, if not, meditating if you can, if not, just sitting in silence for a few minutes, going outside, refocusing your eyes, chewing your food mindfully, getting kind of, I find like my main purpose, like I meditate, and my main reason for that is that I literally feel like when I do that regularly, I get kind of like this buffer outside of me that allows me to kind of like the buffer between the outside world and myself. And also it gives just the level of clarity and focus. It's kind of outstanding. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, there's research that explains the benefits of meditation, but if not, meditate, that just finding time to be still just for a few minutes, just finding, going outside, walk around the block, whatever it is, finding that time to settle in into yourself is very important. I find that planning is very important and prioritizing. It's very easy to, I'm a huge proponent. I write my to-do list for the week and then I move them to my days. I learned to not prioritize more than 3 important tasks per day, because otherwise you get frustrated. You want to give yourself easy wins, because that's just a psychological thing. If it's 3 things on your that you can realistically do in a day and you've done it, and you can maybe grab a couple more then after you've done those 3, but you already won the day. So it's very helpful. And I like to plan my day and write my to-dos the day before, just so in the morning I can start. Again, I'd go sit outside with my coffee, I meditate, and then I kind of ease myself into the day instead of trying to frantically figure out or start replying to emails or whatever it is. Again, we have this buffer of commute time that most of us now don't use. So it's very easy to spend that time scrolling through social media or doing some other, like reading up on news, which in some cases, like, it's fine, but I recommend doing that later in the day, because mornings is where your mind is clear. So what is that main thing you want? What is the main answer you want to find today? Find way to use commute time for really, impactful things rather than just distractions. It's important to set boundaries. Our culture doesn't like to talk about that, especially business culture, but it is important to say, okay, after this time, I don't work on the weekends. I had huge issues with that when I was building my company. I worked all the time. I couldn't tell my partner no when she was asking me something. And it didn't end well for me. So, but just, work is not going anywhere. Check out those 3 important things. And it's important as a leader, what you do, your team will follow. If you're sending them Slack messages at 8 p.m., that implies that they will respond, and just not healthy. I think it's important for us to all respect each other's time and understanding, again, that obviously we now have lives outside of work. Now we see our lives outside of work. And another thing that I actually have a whole other presentation on this, but the importance of rituals and routines. In essence, they impact us emotionally, and they also increase our productivity. So noticing some rituals rituals and, in a broad sense, processes that you can incorporate into your day. Maybe you like to go to a specific coffee shop, sit at a specific table, order a specific drink, and that triggers, for 2 hours, and that triggers flow for you. And that's your most productive time. Maybe in the middle of the day, you get up and you just shake your body over and you jump 10 times, and that gives you a surge of energy. Whatever it is, figuring out some things, because they give our mind a sense of ease and predictability. And that also focuses, it's actually, the research on that is absolutely fascinating. I can talk about that for hours, but it increases the value of the goal, and also allows us to focus more on the goal, because we feel more competence in each step of the goals, of our motion towards the goal. And a word on social media. There's a ton going on right now. I feel like, maybe it's just me, but I feel like there's 5 more times different workshops and virtual conferences and webinars you can attend. And then, of course, we have this idea that as leaders, we need to be super active on socials. We need to constantly post stuff. Just value, check ROI on that. And I find that I personally try to mostly stay away from it, just because I know one of my pitfalls is that I do get easily sucked in, and watching a new video on new way to validate your business idea or whatever it is, and then but then it might be interesting now, but is it bringing me closer to my immediate goals, or is it just a placebo distraction where you feel like you're being productive because you're learning something, but you're really learning? And then again, just, I think we can just all take it easy on ourselves and don't feel like we have to be present and engaged all the time. And it's okay to step back. But the main message here is just check the ROI on the time that you spend on social. So that pretty much concludes it. We talked about the anatomy of a new leader in the remote world, highlighted strategies to infuse your team interactions with connection and purpose, and talked a little bit about mindfulness in remote leadership and discovered some tools to apply it. And I would absolutely love to hear if you have any other kind of tools and tricks and routines that you use to ground yourself and to, you know, be more productive, be more present. I'd love to hear those.
Thank you, Marianna. Great high level, you know, assessment of what we've all been going through in the last few months. And if I may just answer your question from my perspective, purpose is the main motivator for most people. And it's also one of the tenets of conscious capitalism, because it talks about, well, what do people care about? What are their value sets? What motivates them? So purpose has a lot of, you know, intrinsic kind of meaning that ultimately asks people to perform much better. I mean, Gavin and I have this conversation all the time. Like, you know, most people spend 90,000 hours at work in their lifetime. So it's important for the individual to feel like they're doing something worthwhile. So purpose is a really key ingredient of that. And so many people, 2/3 of that population are very disengaged at work, and so few people are motivated to do good things, which is what drives the whole conscious capitalism movement. And, you know, it's just interesting to see how folks can perform differently when they're given that, and how much more they're prepared to invest and do when they're really motivated by a powerful sense of purpose. And so maybe, you know, I'd love to hear what other folks on the line think about that as an idea, as a motivator.
I don't mind jumping in, but Glenn seen me do a presentation. It's actually really similar, Marianna, in some ways to how you led off. But, you know, I'll ask people, why do people go to work? And they'll get, you know, it's obviously things like money and, you know, to pay the rent and things like that. And so there's that list, which I call the avoid pain and suffering list.
Right.
So because, like, you know, people like the Dalai Lama says, everybody wants two things. They want to avoid pain and suffering. They want to find happiness. So, you know, so we go to work for those two reasons. We avoid pain and suffering because we can pay the bills and that kind of thing. And then the finding happiness part is, you know, to some extent it's, you know, because I want to buy a new cell phone or a new car or something like that. So there's those extrinsic rewards, those material things. But the big reason, you know, when I ask people that question and they just I just have them throw as many answers at me as they can, you know, we get the longest list by far is all those intrinsically motivating things. Is to, you know, to make a contribution, to learn new things, to meet people, you know, to be part of something bigger than myself. Those kind of things, those are the answers that by far are the longest part of the list, all those intrinsically motivating things that, you know, engage us, including, you know, some sort of a higher purpose. And those are, so, you know, and that's, and you already mentioned the book Sapiens with, you know, by Harari. And, you know, I think that's the book where he talks about intersocial subjective reality, which is the same, which can be a higher purpose. So, you know, it's an idea, a concept like, you know, I use the example like money. Money is an intersocial subjective reality. We all believe that it has value and therefore it does. And as soon as we all believe it doesn't, it no longer does, right? And the same thing with all, you know, Zoroastrianism or any ancient religion or something that nobody believes in anymore. So, you know, so we may believe in, you know, so whatever that purpose is that we all believe in that motivates us and gets us excited, that's one thing that is different about humans than, you know, anything else. So, you know, you can, you know, chimpanzees, bonobos, elephants, wolves, you know, all of those other social creatures all, you know, have to some extent compassion and generosity and gratitude and, you know, a sense of fairness and that kind of thing in their groups. But only humans have this ability to imagine some sort of concept, some sort of purpose beyond ourselves that we can rally together around. And that's why, you can put maybe, a dozen or 2 dozen chimpanzees together and they'll coordinate and work things out. But you can't put 10,000 of them in a stadium because they'll be complete bedlam. But you can put 10,000 people together with the same common shared purpose, and they will get things done. So it's an amazing thing about us.
Yeah, that's true.
Marianna, I really appreciated your focus on that it's okay to kind of focus in on rituals, rituals and routines. I found that when I moved to work at home, all of my usual rituals and routines, commuting and using that commuting time for something with a higher purpose, all those things got thrown out, and it changed my physical being, because now I'm sitting at a desk for 10 hours instead of walking around talking to people and moving around the state and talking to people. It changed a lot of things, and I don't think I've fully adapted yet to the depth of those changes and how they interplay physically, psychologically, emotionally. So your presentation, in essence, gave us permission, or me permission, to look at those things and look at the areas of burnout that's not just loss of control or loss of too much work, but the other factors. And so I really appreciated your way you wove it all together today.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope, I'm very glad to hear it. And I hope that, I think that's ultimately, that's one of my main messages, is that I really kind of feel like there's a lot of conversation in the entrepreneurial community around, how to do this better, how to sell more, how to be more productive, how to hustle harder, whatever it is. But there's this other part. It's like we are humans and we have needs that we can push back. We can sort of just embrace the hustle culture and do all that and be successful for a while. And some of us better than others. Some of us have more, kind of see more purpose in that. But for others, like myself, for example, I can totally subscribe, I can work for free for something that is like, it really fires me up. I learned to not do it, but I get the urge to do it. But then ultimately, no matter what you do, if you don't take care of that, and that unfortunately requires conscious effort, because another topic that really fires me up is the fact that, our work is on screens right now, and everything in our mobile phones or computers is designed to keep our attention for as long as possible. Like social media, main metric is eyeball hours. Same for YouTube, same for other places. Like they all count how much time we spend on that. So it is literally like, it is our job, and it does require a lot of effort, because if we just kind of let it slide, then it's very easy. I don't know if you've noticed, I noticed that over and over, how there's always a next thing to do on the computer. And if you just sit there, it's very easy. Like the day just flies by. And maybe you've done many things. You probably have done many things for your business, but ultimately it's like, you just get sucked into that. And it does take a conscious effort to do something else, to move to a different place, sometimes to even like get up and get food. Sometimes you get so sucked in that it's hard to do that. So, right? Like, I don't know, I've experienced that, where it's like, I'll just gonna do this one more thing and then I'll go get lunch, and then it's like 3 p.m., right? And then I'm finally getting some lunch. So, and understanding that it's not a weakness, and that actually that makes us healthier if we prioritize those things. Like I try to schedule, like go outside with a cup of tea and read a book for 30 minutes at like 2:30 p.m. Because I know that I get more done in a shorter period of time if I do give myself those breaks. Work will take all the time that's allocated to work. So if you allocate 24 hours to work, it'll take 24 hours. If you allocate 8, it'll take all 8. If you don't force yourself to get your butt up from the screen and go do something else, then that will stay there. So I do hope, and I appreciate that you kind of that's the message that you got, that's definitely my intention to just, it's okay. And that has to do with, you know, the whole notion of like masks coming off. Can we just stop pretending that we're like robots and we only use data and we constantly are productive, we constantly work? Can we embrace the fact that we are human and we have intuition and we have this ability to not be productive all the time? And it's in those gaps between productive like spurts, that's when the ideas come. It's in the stillness, it's in some sort of like repetitive motion, you know. And it's actually research, I can't quote whose research it is, but it's research that if you want to trigger a creative flow, the best way to do it is to engage in some repetitive manual activity doesn't engage your brain but does engage your body, like gardening, or maybe like cooking for many people, or I don't know, putting together a Lego, like I don't know, whatever it is, like needlepoint, whatever you want to do, something like that. That does free up the brain, but it also keeps so it's not stillness, right? It's not kind of stagnation, it's still movement. I know I definitely do that. When I need some creative stuff, I personally can't generate creative ideas, or it takes forever if I'm staring at the screen. So I just take my pen and notebook and I go somewhere, sit at a coffee shop or go walk around, and then it's like 10 minutes and I got the answer to things. But if I'm in the screen, then the answer takes forever, or the best answer never comes.
An interesting thing about the whole moving into a two-dimensional workspace too is about the kind of tools that we use. And you know, we've been working remotely as a team for about 10 years, so we're quite comfortable with tools like Zoom and other tools like Slack. But a lot of organizations have struggled because they're taking the same toolkit that they've been using in an office space and trying to make it work in a remote collaborative space. And I think we need to do a lot of work on the toolkit. What do you think about that, Marianna?
Sorry, I was a little. Could you repeat? Could you kind of sum it up a little bit? The question.
Yeah, I think what Glenn was saying is that lots of companies who weren't practiced at working remotely tried to take what they normally did and then just do it online. You know,
well, yeah, I mean,
it didn't work really well.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Fill out this requisition form and hand it into procurement, and that's gonna work. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's Docusign, right? Like there are ways to do things online that, but that's not like, I don't have any doubt, and I observe all the time. I mean, in my job, like we can do our work remotely. That's not an issue. It's other things, and it's how do we stay connected, and how do we stick close to the purpose and see that purpose, and how do we do things that how do we push things forward instead of reacting, right? How do we respond instead of reacting? How do we come up with new solutions instead of just kind of chasing, fighting the windmills?
Yeah.
I see some good comments in the chat too.
There's a lot of waste in the systems at workplaces, and there's no sense carrying that into the virtual world.
Yeah, I think it is. It's an ability for us to reinvent and kind of reassess every element of our work environment that we've had, and kind of the defaults that we've had as, in our roles as managers, in our team interactions, whatever it is, in the way we talk even to customers. We have to talk to customers much more compassionately, and also like we need to make them feel seen. We can't just sort of assume that, the same. I like so a couple of comments here. Paul is asking, is this sustainable, or is this what to do until normal returns? Well, will it ever return? And my personal hope is that, again, this will give us a chance to reassess and kind of improve the normal, kind of normal 2.0, so to say. I hope. So I definitely hope that we'll be able to travel and connect again soon. But on the other hand, will anyone ever return to be at the office full time all day, every day, just because that's the assumption? I doubt it. I think that most employees will challenge, or at least, we've proven we can work remotely, so why not? And I personally, I want to go back to the office. I like to wear clothes, I like to talk to people. I like to share a cup of coffee and do my hair and whatever. But I don't want to go back to the office 5 times a day and commute for an hour and a half every day, even though I do like my commute. I listen to podcasts or whatever, but is there a new balance we can find? Maybe it's like 2 or 3 days in the office and the other time at home. And then also, I think that my big hope is that we're able to really carry over this notion of whole self and embracing our whole selves at work, and not being ashamed of the parts that don't fit in the whole business hustle, whatever narrative. Not be ashamed of them, but embrace them and see them as, this is this other thing that I can bring, and this other information stream that I can bring that informs how I do business and how I connect to customers. Because ultimately, when you think of on the human level, the issues that you have, we might be ashamed of them as business people, but our customers probably have very similar internal struggles and challenges. So this is the point, the way and the opportunity to connect and be like, okay, yes, I have this thing for you that I'm selling you, but I'm also human. I understand you. I know what you're going through, and not in a sense as just a marketing speak, but really.
Well,
And then
it's one of the key things too, for if people are going to feel safe and feel part of a group or part of a team, they need to be able to bring their whole selves to work, and show up and be who they are, with their cat crawling around on,
right.
behind them or whatever. And if their boss, if their leader or manager or whatever is bringing their whole self to work and being quirky and sharing, the weird things that are going on in their lives and whatever, then that makes it safe for everybody else to do that too. And you start to create that better kind of more free environment where people, if Marianna, if you're my boss and you've been freely admitting, or bringing your whole self to work and admit it when you don't know something or when you made a mistake, then when I make a mistake or I don't know something, then I feel perfectly fine to say, hey, I don't get this, or I'm not sure this really makes sense, and bring that up because you've led by example and shown that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and Carrie made a note that vulnerability builds trust too. Yeah, it's like some Renee Brown in there. I've been obsessively reading and listening to her because I could have written it all myself. And yeah, I like the note. Andrea also shared a note about free flow journaling. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about that? I also started journaling. I've heard a lot about that. I mostly do it at nights, but would you mind sharing a little bit about kind of your experience and maybe the technique that you use?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Actually, this is something that I learned from someone else. They said the first thing in the morning, and I've been doing this probably for about a year and a half now, is the first thing in the morning before I get my cup of coffee, before I get dressed, before I brush my teeth, regarding anything, I literally pick myself up in an unconscious state and go to a desk and I start writing. And I don't necessarily go with the intent of how am I going to start my day in terms of from a productivity standpoint of view. It's not about what are the things I need to get done today. It's more as kind of reflecting in terms of what do I hope to accomplish as a human being? How do I want to add a value with the people that I interact with today? And I just start literally writing. Whatever is the first thing that comes into my mind, I jot it down. I don't do it on my computer. I literally handwrite in a journal. I find that I am much more emotive and I connect with who I am by doing it that way. And typically I give myself permission. It could be 15 minutes. It could be 30 minutes. Sometimes The only thing I need to tell myself is accomplished in 10 minutes. But it is amazing to me when I give myself permission, how that sense of insight that somehow makes its way to the paper actually informs how I behave the rest of the day.
Love that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you.
I think it's also very, you know, you probably have heard, I'm pretty bad with names, so, but there's the notion of a square with the urgency and then the impact on two axes, and then there's things that are impactful but not urgent. It's very, very hard to get to them, and those are those strategic things, right? Those are might be who I am, what are my values as a human, what do I want to achieve, how do I see my business, what are some things that won't directly solve the problem I'm facing right this second, but will take me to the next level in the long run. And finding that space, whatever it is throughout the day, to, you know, ideally, absolutely, first thing in the morning, before you have any, I like to think of it as, you know, the incoming versus outgoing information. We are bombarded with information right now. There's all this incoming flow of information, but I think it's very important to make a conscious effort to balance, because we have more answers and information inside of us than we give ourselves credit for. And not all answers come in something that will be incoming. Giving yourself space to, exactly, yes, thank you, Jamie. Giving yourself space to create that outgoing information, whatever it might be. I think that's important. And another thing is that I used to have a meditation ritual just like that, where first thing I'd get up and then I sit for 10-15 minutes, and it was just revolutionary. Then I had a baby, and now he's a toddler, so now my day starts at 6 a.m. with mom. So all that, you know, beautiful, you know, capturing the just awake state for me is like making waffles. So, and it took me a long time to kind of adjust and become okay with the fact that, okay, maybe I'll take that space for myself after I take him to school, and then I take that break. Because I do, you know, I know the ideal process for me, and that would be to get up first thing in the morning. But sometimes, you know, other things capture our attention, or something that we can't, you know, I can't wake up at 5 because I need a lot of sleep. So that doesn't work for me. I mean, I can, but I don't want to. But, you know, and if it's a break that you take in the middle of the day, that's fine too. Like whatever it is, I think it's important to be realistic about that, you know, that effort of mindfulness and that effort of presence versus idealistic. So there's this idea, you know, the ideal me would do these things, but what would a real you do? What can a real you do realistically, sustainably, versus just having this, you know, vision that you'll just get frustrated and you'll ultimately, that won't, again, it's all about like handing yourself easy wins. It's just 3 things on your to-do list. An easy time when I can fit in a little pause and all that stuff. So I think thinking about that is important. Looks like we're at time.
Yeah, it might be time to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insight, your wisdom, and your sharing all your learnings today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have these conversations, and the small groups are a nice, intimate, safe space to do that. So
absolutely.
Heads up next week. I first met Paul about a year ago, I think, when he was running an incredible operation called ECA. He's since joined the board, and he's a frequent guest on these calls and a regular contributor. And we asked him to kind of come up with some thoughts around his management style, because I was so impressed with the way he ran this plant. There was literally millions of parts moving around this assembly line and big machines, and yet the whole thing ran so smoothly. And he's going to be generous enough to share how he got there, because it's a very interesting management style that really got him to this place. So join us next week. Thanks, Paul, in advance for sharing that. I'm really looking forward to that. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And hopefully we can see you again next Thursday.